live. So this is Hillary Topper from We Are Triathletes, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Dan Schaefer. Um, Dan is a sports and business strategist, and he's also the author of a book called Click It. And he's going to talk a little bit about the book and tell you exactly, what it's about and why it's important. And before I introduce you to Dan, I just want to thank him also for being a team sponsor. We really appreciate your support.
Thanks, Marie.
So tell us, Dan, a little bit about your background.
Okay. What my whole focus has been is helping people perform well in a variety of situations, some under tremendous amount of stress, but for the most part, it's helping people to control their mind game. I've discovered a variety of issues that get in people's way that help them to get in the way of performing the way they'd like. And it transcends all sports. It transcends business. I see there's very little difference between business and sports. Except that sports happens faster, but it's the same type of business situation. So when I put together all of the issues and some of the strategies that I work with, I came up with a book. I'll hold a book up once. Click the competitive edge of a business, sports, and entertainment. One of the interesting things about this book is I tell people, don't read the book, but scroll the table of contents and trust your subconscious mind to tell you exactly what you need to read for the next situation you're going into. Now, that's exactly the same thing that I talk about with athletes. Chad Pennington wrote the forward to my book. He's a quarterback for the Jets and the Dolphins. A lot of what every high-performing athlete has to do is ultimately come down to the portion where they trust their training, trust the work they put into it, and then get themselves in a situation where they can really do well. And so it's identifying what gets in people's way and moving those things out of them.
So talk to us. I mean, sometimes even when I'm training, I feel this way where I am maybe riding a bike or I'm running or even swimming, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm really not good at this. I can't do this. So how does somebody like me, I mean, and I know a lot of people out there have the same thoughts going through their head. How do you alleviate those thoughts? How do you turn those thoughts around and make them positive so that you could get through it?
I think it's a great question. Many people I work with, both in sport and business, don't have a target. Everybody that I work with today is in 2022 working backwards. Where do you want to be in 2022? Then you work backwards to look at anything you could possibly do to foul it up and make sure it wouldn't happen. Now, the interesting thing about that is what every athlete is using is they rely on their subconscious mind, the training they put into it, to move them toward the direction they want. So the interesting thing about your subconscious mind and why it's so important to make use of it is that it must act out every thought, image, or idea you put into it. So when somebody sets a goal or a target for 2022, the goal drags them toward it rather than fighting toward it. So one of the things I've worked with swimmers with triathlons, they said, well, I have trouble with the swim. I said, well, you have a lot of options to deal with this. First of all, you brought up the issue of the way you talk to yourself. I tell my clients they're not permitted to beat themselves up unless they have my permission. They have to call me up and say, is it okay to beat myself up now? Because with all the training and all the work people put into this, there's no reason they should beat themselves up. But they do. Very interesting. You come back and you say, how do I do this? And one of the things is, Hillary, are we still connected?
Yeah, we are. We're still connected.
Something came up on
it. Yeah, it looks like Janet's iPhone came up. I'm not sure why.
One of the biggest things is that when I have a wish list, and I'd be happy to get that out to anybody who would like it. But the wish list starts out with increased concentration. So how do I increase my concentration? I find out what distracts me. And the question is, what distracts me? And the biggest distraction for people is the way they talk to themselves. So how do you stop that when you hear that chatter that goes on and on and on and on? It contaminates your performance. So what do you do with it? If everybody just tried for a second to push their tongue up to the roof of their mouth, they'd notice that they can't think of anything when their tongue is on the roof of their mouth. So how long do you want to listen to this tape going on and on and on and on and on? I suggest not long, because it drags you off, it distracts you. I found that when talking to professional athletes, so at this, rather than seeing you, Hillary, I've got myself in a picture. Is that
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I put you as the,
okay?
yeah.
So, we look at what gets in somebody's way. So I'll give you an example that comes from hockey goaltenders, for example, and you can bring it right back into triathletes. I tell them you should make a best saves video. You could make a best events video of the best swim that you ever made, and the best bike you ever made, and the best run you ever made. If you do them separately and you visualize yourself making the best swim that you possibly can, you take that image and you burn it into a DVD in your brain, then you could always go back to that. So that gives you an option. Rather than listen to some crap that you're thinking about, you can watch your video. But you can do a couple of things. I worked with one woman who had some challenges with her swim. And I said, you have a choice. I said, you can close your eyes and you can imagine that the inside of your eyelids are flat screen TVs. Now you can watch your performance. You can watch yourself swimming a swim. You can actually be in the water. You could imagine you're in a helicopter looking down on yourself, or you can imagine yourself standing on the beach watching yourself swim in. And that last image is what really turned her around, because she would do that. Now, most people can't tonight go and do an open water swim unless they're doing it with visualization. So once you have this video, you can run it. The interesting thing is your subconscious mind never knows the difference between whether you actually made the swim or whether you thought about it. So it's perfect practice in a perfect environment.
Interesting. So on that same thing, right? You go through a race and something goes wrong. Maybe the water is choppy and or there's a really strong current and you can't get through it, or you get a flat tire on the bike during, an Ironman or a sprint or whatever, and how do you overcome those obstacles and move forward?
I think it's not to anybody's advantage to deal with that issue thinking about it when it happens. I would take every bad play that went on in a football game. I would have somebody take 10 or 15 minutes after the game is over to replay that play in their mind. Because anything that you do other than to get right to fixing the bike flat or to getting back in the race and finishing as best you can is going to drag you off your game, which is the idea is to finish. Mm-hmm. So it's how somebody deals with it. So there is a way to both take nothing onto your triathlon course or take anything away with you. And that's a trunk card. You have some of those things. It's a small, people could use a small index card. This came from a client of mine for 20 years, Jody Reicher. She ran a Badwater in Death Valley. She said to me, the very first 10 or 15 miles, she said, I got very angry at my support crew. What I realized is that I carried anger for 120 miles. She said, it drained me. So what we did is she took a card and wrote on the card anything that could possibly distract her throughout the race. Put the card in the trunk of a car. And she decided to deal with that when she got back there, not while she was running. When you start to develop that type of a system where you snap your fingers and you'll click back in the trunk of my car, you find your subconscious mind starts to work that. It lets you put that off. It's the same thing as worry. I mean, does anybody worry? Everybody worries. Well, there's a worry strategy. You pick 10 minutes in a day, let's say 5 to 5:10 tonight. You're going to do absolutely nothing but worry. about whatever complaint. So what you do is anything that happens during the day, you say 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and you go. You have to show up at 5 o'clock to worry. So what gets in the way? People. I spoke to somebody yesterday who's anxious about a triathlon that's coming up in October. So how does she deal with that? Up to now, she doesn't have another way to talk to herself about the race. But if she had the best segments, videos of the race, she could run her best swim over and over and over and over again, which puts her in control of the mind game. But you have to know what distracts you. I mean, what distracts you in a race? I had a client who ran a triathlon. He said to me, he said, I had to go to, he said, I was doing great. He said, I had to go to plan B. I said, why? He said, because they ran out of Gatorade and water. He said, you can't imagine people who are managing a triathlon run out of water, but they ran out of water. So it's how this comes about and how you play it. But it's having a system that you can play with your mind game. What gets in the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes up a lot where, you have a big race and you just have so much anxiety about the race. Can I do it? Am I going to be able to finish? Am I going to DNF? Am I going to, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And you go through this whole thing in your head and nothing else, you just can't even function in life because you keep having that rattle going on, so what you're suggesting is just take a moment in a day and just leave it for that. Is that basically what you're
we're on Long Island, so if you valet park your car in the city and you're driving to Montauk and the guy who valet parked your car puts on the worst music that you ever heard in your life. When you get in the car, what do? You turn it off, or you change the station.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that people have another station in their mind that they can go to, because if they don't have another station, you got to listen. What they don't do is they don't find themselves halfway to Montauk saying, we're still listening to this garbage. So the point is that having a strategy, but anticipate that. But the other thing you brought up is interesting. People talk about anxiety before a race. They talk about butterflies. And I worked with a guy who ran, and this was just casual. We just had a discussion. He won a senior swimming championship. And he said to me, I always get anxious before. I said, what if you're misdefining it? What if it's not anxiety? What if it's adrenaline that your body is producing so that you can do much better in the race than you did before or have a lot of energy? If you define it as fear, then you have to act afraid. But what if you look for it? My right, I've worked with a couple of heavyweight prize fighters who said the same thing. If they don't feel that edge, they're concerned about it. So some people say, I wish I didn't feel this way. But really, if you translate it in your mind in an effective way, it'll work for you. But there's so many different people listen to this, and so many people look for these things. What's going to work for you? I don't really know. But if what you're doing right now is not working the best, then I suggest you may want to try something else. Just a way of thinking.
So, all right, so let's turn this around. So now you have a race that's coming up. You're not anxious about it, maybe because you've done these types of races before. Is that a bad thing not to be anxious? I mean, because then you could, with the anxiety, you could turn that around and use that adrenaline to push through the race. So
each individual is different. You may be able to do it yourself. It may not be important to you. I mean, if you've got a lot of experience with races, you're used to going into them, you're familiar with what your body is. For somebody who's doing it for the first time or the second time, you may have to put some different strategies in that'll help you. But it's basically, you see, you can't control what you can't see, hear, or feel. So when you listen carefully to the way you talk to yourself, and everybody listening to this is going to be surprised to notice how much they hear themselves talking to themselves. So what I would say to you, I said, what does Hillary hear Hillary saying to Hillary when Hillary overhears Hillary talking to Hillary about an next triathlon? But the point is, what kind of language? What are you talking to yourself about? What are you saying? What gets in the way?
Mm-hmm.
And again, if it's positive, and a lot comes back to trust. I mean, you put a tremendous amount of training into your races. Many people who are listening, I'm sure, do. Well, you have to trust the training. You can control the training. You can't control anything else. You can't control the weather. You can't control black swans that come up in the middle of these things, people running out of water, or somebody in some high pressure situation. But again, thinking very often, there was a guy from the Mets years ago who said concentration is thinking about absolutely nothing at just the right time. That is an interesting way to make that happen. If everybody who's watching this could focus on one spot, they can even do it with their thumb, put their thumb finger up and focus in the center of their thumbnail. And while they're focusing on the center of their thumbnail, become aware of something out of their left peripheral vision without moving their eyeballs, and something out of their right peripheral vision without moving their eyeballs. When you have all those three things together, you discover you can't think of anything. So if somebody is riding and they're having all these negative thoughts going, just move your peripheral vision out to the right and the left and focus on what's in front of you and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Great advice. Do you need a plan B?
I didn't ever hear about a plan B until the guy talked to me about when they ran out of water. But I think a plan B. Probably, first of all, is preparation for competition. I'll tell you, interestingly enough, when Jody went out to run the Badwater one year, she got violently ill, had upset stomach and all kinds of stuff, because she went into a local restaurant, ate local food, drank local water, and it blew her out of the race. So what she said she had to do is take her own water with her, be very careful what she ordered, be very careful about the food she had, how it was prepared, and because you don't want something that you could control beforehand to derail your race. So it's taking, are you? I don't bike, so do you practice repairing flats? Maybe. You spend some time repairing flats so you're quick with it. You have a system. You have everything you need.
Right.
That's important. So it's really preparation for competition.
So it's basically anticipating that things will go wrong and identifying how to solve those issues before you even get into the race.
That's true. One of the things we've talked about is I have a whole program called Selling Mistakes. See, I sell mistakes to people. I think it's like if you said to me, I'm driving to California with my family, I'm driving to LA, and I said to you, well, I have a pamphlet here with every radar trap between here and LA. Do you want to buy it now, or do you want to wait till you get to LA to buy it? No, you want to buy it now.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, what mistakes have other triathletes made that if you could look at it and say, gee, I'm not going to do that, and learn from the mistakes of other people. It's great to learn from your own mistakes, but it's a lot less expensive to learn by somebody else's. So it's how it plays in. And there's a lot of, if I go down a list of mistakes that my business clients avoid, that my clients made before they became my client, it's like people say sooner. I should have come to you sooner. I should have talked to you sooner. I should have planned. I didn't plan. I listened to people who laughed at what I was doing. I mean, a lot of people think that people who run races, extreme athletes, are nuts. Well, they're not. But, they get that kind of feedback from people sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it even no matter what type of an athlete you are, even if you're a beginner, I mean, I'm running a Galloway Long Island group, and the runners just ran their first 5K. We actually just ran our first 10K, many of the runners, and many thought that they couldn't do it, and just with that support, they were able to get by. So yeah, so that's, I mean, and that was going through their heads, like, I'm not going to be able to finish. And now we're doing a half marathon. And, it's still, a lot of people are saying to me, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. So what do you say to people like that?
I think that you ask them to go to the end of the race. I mean, what do they want? What do you want to have? I want to be able to finish this 5K. Okay. Here's a magic wand, wave it. Tell me what it looks like when you're standing at the finish line of the 5K. Well, I don't think I can get there. Forget that conversation. That's somebody else talking, It's overhearing some negative comments. Sometimes people have to talk to themselves. they'll have one voice inside themselves saying, this is not going to work. I'm not going to make this. And you have that other voice that has to come up and say, you be quiet until the race is over. I'll talk to you later. But it's how do you play with that? But
Yeah.
that the thing is to have people know that that's everybody. Everybody runs into that kind of stuff because things come up. They either want to, some people want to finish. Some people want to finish with a better time than they did the last time. In spite of the drawbacks that have happened because of unavoidable things in a race. You don't know.
I think for especially for people with the, the unknown, like someone doing an Ironman for the first time or a half Ironman or, their first 5K or first marathon, it's the unknown that makes people anxious, I think.
Right. No, I would agree with you. But I also think that if people started at the end and said, okay, I'm at the end of my triathlon in the city. I just finished my run and I'm in Central Park. What did the run look like? I mean, work backwards on it. But it is unknown. But the thing is, if somebody has trained effectively, maybe with a coach that would train them and be able to move in that direction, and then talks to themselves effectively, you can talk to themselves through the race. And then where do you, in a race, do you run into challenges that get in your way? It's really controlling self-talk, effectively training, and then in the day of the race, really getting yourself together to do the very best you can do under those circumstances, whatever's presented. But these little strategies, like your tongue and roof of your mouth when you hear negative conversation, a chatter, negative self-talk going on and on, there's no reason you should listen to that. There's nothing to be gained by listening to it. So shut it off. Now, if you have to keep your tongue up on the roof of your mouth, very funny little story. I had a guy said to me, he said, I work with golfers. He said to me, my mother wants to see you. I said, why? He said, she's 82. He said, I hope there's nothing the matter. So I met her at the Yale Club in the city. I said to her, what do you want to do? She says, you have to promise me you won't tell my son what I'm going to ask you. I said, what do you want? She said, I want to beat my friends in golf. I said, okay. So we talked about this at the tongue and roof of her mouth. So she calls me one Saturday afternoon and she says, Dang, I just beat my friends. I had my tongue on the roof of my mouth. It was funny. But, there's a lot of skepticism. I expect people to be skeptical about this. But you only know until you try it. But if your subconscious mind wants you to effectively reach the target that you've set, that it agrees with, and it's dragging you toward it, stuff that like this will work for some people it doesn't work for. And some people think it's ridiculous and will try, and that's okay. But the fact is that this works this way and it works in business. I mean, I have a picture on my iPhone of a professional ice skater who said to me, I get nervous before I go out to perform my routine. And she was hypnotized, and we had to put a thumb and index finger together like this. And I have a picture on my phone of her with a thumb and index finger together on the ice, because that she knows will calm her down.
Interesting.
So it's what works for people.
Does anybody, I'm going to open this up now. We have a couple of people online. Do you guys have any questions for Dan Schaefer? 2 seconds. So Dan, talk to us about how you work. So if somebody was to hire you, how do you work with somebody?
People start out with client survey. It takes them out to 2022. Where do they see themselves? What do they want to have happen? What's not happening right now that needs to happen? And then when we go through that, and I have the triathlon survey. So that has somebody go by and they analyze their swim. How do they talk to themselves during the swim? What about the bike? What about the run? And we put all of that together and we find out what they need to change to do that. I use hypnosis to make that happen. A lot of it depends on somebody's budget. I don't talk about prices until I find out what somebody wants to have happen. And the first conversation is there's no fee for that. Just tell me what's going on, what needs to happen. But I do think that I want to focus it down onto an individual performance. That's where I work the best with somebody. So when I get the triathlon survey, I have about 6 of them out right now with people who are really looking at the obstacles that could get in their way of doing better in their triathlon. And then we'll see where it goes.
So how did you actually get into this? I mean, are you an athlete?
Not anymore. I got into this. I did a lot of work years ago with separation, loss, and life transition, with grief and bereavement. And I found some strategies to help people deal with loss in some unique ways. And then I started to study hypnosis, and I found quite by accident that it helped me tremendously with my golf game. And then I found that I could help other people with their golf games. And then somebody asked me about, my lawyer represented hockey goaltenders. And he said, these are high performance kids, the top prospects in the country. Is there something you can do with them to help them perform better? With the student athlete, it's a different dynamic. It's on ice performance, academic excellence, and off ice behavior. That's the trifecta. So they're going to handle their training on the ice, but the mental preparation on the ice is a different story. Academics is another story. So it really takes this whole click system that works for individuals and companies who want to increase their performance and do some unusual things in a different way, separate themselves from their competition. That's what this is about. So this click system really applies to a whole wide variety of performances, because there's almost no sport that I haven't worked with an athlete. I've worked with people for the Hampton Classic and riding. Chad Pennington is a quarterback in Jets and Dolphins. So there's a lot of situations here that really help people. But I have to know what they need. The question is, what do you need to have happen right now that's not happening?
Right.
Figure that out. What do you want? A lot of people have no target. And I think the target is, can I get all my performance together? Can I get it so that I can close my eyes at night and run through my whole race? Can I use my subconscious and visualization to improve my performance? Absolutely. Does somebody want to do that? Maybe yes, maybe no, but does it work? Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you've given us a lot of really good tools today. The tongue tool. I like that tongue tool. The thumb tool. You've also talked to us about how to just wipe out those negative thoughts or use those for another day. Whoops, we got, I don't know.
So I mean, that's all important stuff.
Right.
What does somebody want to do to make it work?
Exactly. So I'm going to just throw this out one last time to the group and see if anybody else has any questions for Dr. Dan. Tracy, or do you have any questions?
Not at this moment.
Okay, good. All right. So, then I guess without further ado, I'm going to thank you, Dan Schaefer. Can you just show us your book again and tell us where we may be able to get it, and also how to contact you in case anybody wants to talk to you?
Click is available on Amazon. It's available in Roslyn. It's available in the trunk of my car. But people can contact me and text me at 917-880-6758 just for more information. To see how this works. Maybe works for you, maybe it's not for you, but the end of the day, it's a tool that may help you perform better if you want to buy into this system of controlling your mind game. It flows over into business. The difference between business and sports is that sports happens faster.
Absolutely. No, I love it. This was great, Dan. I mean, I learned a lot. I think, just knowing that, there's other people like me out there who have these race anxiety or negative self-talks, and ways and strategies in which we could change those was really, really important. And I appreciate your time. So
Thank you.
without further ado, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you guys for joining in. And we'll be back next week with another seminar. This seminar will be live on YouTube within the day, so look for it. And thank you again.
Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon, Hillary. Bye now.
Bye.